Alright, everybody. So, there's been a development and a story from last year, if I recall correctly. I can't imagine it having been more than a year since this story. I remember covering it. I feel like it's only been a year. It's a very sad story, a massive tragedy that swept across most of the left-leaning internet about a year ago, and that was the murder of an innocent 16-year-old girl who was a trans woman named Brianna J. Obviously, her murder was motivated by the fact that she was trans. It was a hate crime, and everybody knew it was a hate crime based on the fact that she had been stabbed, like, over 50 times and her body left in a park. It was very clearly a murder. I mean, duh. And one that was motivated by hate for her and her identity. Now, the police, at the time that this story came out, were able to find 2 suspects and charge these 2 suspects, but these suspects were underage, which meant because they had not yet been convicted, their names could not be made public because of like some UK law thing or something like that. But now that they've been convicted and found guilty, they are now, their names have been made public. We know what they look like, we know what their names are, and the police have admitted that the murder was at least partially motivated by her being trans, because somehow someone can be at least partially motivated by somebody's identity to kill them. Like, apparently that can be just a little bit of the motivation, and not all of it, according to the police. I don't know how that works, that somebody can be, like, driven to kill someone, and it's only a little bit or partially because of their race. I don't know. I don't know how, or because of their identity, right? I don't know how that, like, calculates there, but Turf Island isn't known for their good handling of trans-related political and civil rights topics. Anyway, at the very least, we got a silver lining to this very tragic thundercloud of a story. Teenagers jailed for, quote, exceptionally brutal murder of Brianna J. Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe were partially motivated by 16-year-old victim's transgender identity, judge says. Partially motivated. Here is the video that came with the Guardian article, but we're going to read the Guardian article too.
How come I'm a suspect?
How come you're a suspect?
Because I'm the last person at scene, or is it?
I can explain it.
No, listen. Right, listen.
Is this them getting arrested? This
You
is
ready?
the moment to...
Yeah.
This is them
Eddie,
getting
you're on
arrested.
suspicion of murder, alright?
You are under arrest on suspicion of murder.
Damn. I didn't know we were going to get to see them get arrested. This is them. Listen, I'm not going to lie. They don't look British. They look like redneck American kids, you know? I mean, obviously they are, like, redneck in spirit based on their hateful beliefs, but I don't know, it's just they look like American rednecks. I guess British rednecks and bigots look much the same as the... Hate kind of, like, just morphs your body. Like, hate both rots your soul and your body. So you just get that similar dead-eyed look and neck beard and just kind of like smoothed out detailless face. That leafy look kind of sets in. No, phrenology is real when it comes to bigots. Police have released CCTV footage from the day of the murder, which shows Brianna meeting Jenkinson and Ratcliffe at the bus stop before making their way to the park. So yeah, they've got them red-handed. She was last seen with them, going to the place of the murder scene, where her body was found. Dashcam footage shows them leaving the park without her.
You didn't have to say anything, but you may harm you eventually mention when questioned. So you later line in court, and if you do say evidence, do you understand?
Yeah, well, let's just unlock these.
Scarlett, listen to what I've got to say.
Yeah.
At this moment,
They're fucked. They're super fucked. And they know it. I want you to know they are in, like, an insane amount of fear, okay? The amount of fear that they're in isn't as much as they have inflicted on their victim, but you better believe they're getting a good amount of fear as payback, okay? Like, they are terrified. They are scared shitless of their situation, and they deserve the situation they're in. The teenager pair who murdered Brianna J have been sentenced to life in prison for a, quote, exceptionally brutal killing, partly motivated by her transgender identity. Scarlett Jenkinson, who was described by the judge as the driving force behind the murder, was sentenced to a minimum of 22 years for what the Crown Prosecution Services said was one of the most disturbing cases their lawyers had ever dealt with. Eddie Ratcliffe, a quiet and studious former champion kickboxer, a quiet and studious... When do they ever describe, like, anybody else like this that's done a crime? Like, could you imagine, like, the media describing a young black teen who murdered a young girl as, like, a formerly, like, studious, kind, and like, excitable kid? They would never describe... They would say, like, there were clues of this happening for years ahead of time. Like, when do you get this, like, why are they getting talked about like this? Like, they used to be such good kids. So weird. I've never heard them describe a black person like that, ever. Yeah. Like, even if you make everything else be the same, but the kids are black, I could not imagine the media being that soft in describing them before committing the crime. There's this tendency to sort of, like, take away the childhood of black kids in legal proceedings. Like, they'll literally call, like, a 15-year-old kid who's black, like, a young black man. They'll take the kid status away to add, like, a threatening aura. It's very common. Very, very common. Sentencing, Miss Justice Yip said, quote, You both took part in a brutal and planned murder which was sadistic in nature and where a secondary motive was hostility towards Brianna because of her transgender identity. What was the primary motive, according to this judge? She said Jenkinson was motivated by a, quote, deep desire to kill, and pronounced her concern on hearing that the teenager had expressed the desire to kill again after her conviction. She had written a new, quote, kill list since her detention, which included the names of some of her carers, and the court heard. So apparently, Scarlett Jenkinson, the girl who murdered Brianna J, has continued to elicit murderous, like, thoughts, and so the judge has been inclined to say that, well, yes, this person targeted Brianna because she's trans, she was gonna kill anyway. They were going to kill anyway. They were murderers, they were killers, they were looking to kill, and they targeted her because she's trans. I kind of get why the judge said it that way then. I kind of get it now. I think the left maybe gave this judge a little too much shit on Twitter for that. If, like, all the evidence suggests these kids are just killers, like, just straight up killers. They just chose Brianna because she was trans. I get why she worded it that way. The specification of these kids are killers, and they targeted her both because they wanted to kill and because she was trans. I get that now. I think the judge maybe got a lot of shit from the left when you consider she also handed over a life sentence verdict, right? To both defendants, the judge said, quote, You picked Brianna because you both thought she would be an easy target. Yip warned the pair may never be... And that is why a lot of, like, trans killings happen, by the way. Like, that is partially why. Like, trans women are seen as an easy target by killers, too. And like, serial killers have targeted trans women. Like, Jack the Ripper targeted women and trans women notoriously. Like, didn't Jack the Ripper kill multiple cross-dressers? like drag queens of the 1800s effectively? Didn't he kill multiple like cross-dressers? Was that not a thing that he did? I swear he killed Oh, no. I'm just mistaking the fact that he did kill some men. Okay. Never mind. He killed a lot of women and sex workers, but he killed some men too, apparently. Equality. She told a psychiatrist she had stabbed Brianna, quote, repeatedly, and found it, quote, exciting, and that she killed her because she thought Brianna would stop being her friend. She murdered Brianna so she would, quote, always be with her, the court heard. Jenkinson, who was obsessed with serial killers, also admitted to the psychiatrist that she, quote, intended to take parts of Brianna's body as a token. She had previously told Ratcliffe that she wanted to keep Brianna's, quote, pretty eyes. So, the vibe that I'm getting is that the boy was like an accomplice in the killing, an enabler of the girl who was like the actual, like, Ted Bundy fucking like serial killer monster in this situation. Obviously both of them are monsters, but one of them is like a Jeffrey Dahmer tier monster, another one of them is a goon. And the boy seems to just be a goon, like an enabler, while the girl in this case is like talking about wanting to take her eyes and take trophies and shit and wanting to kill more and having kill lists and feeling good about killing. Never let her out. I mean, at least as long as she continues to say she wants to kill more, yeah, don't let her out. This is some Arkham Asylum shit. Jenkinson was obsessed with serial killers and admitted to the psychiatrist that oh yeah, I already read that bit. The court heard that Brianna was stabbed, it was 28 times, but there is no evidence that her killers took any of her body parts, thank God. In addition, Jenkinson admitted that she tried to poison Brianna a few weeks before the murder with red ibuprofen tablets, quote, pretending that they would get her high. The court heard Brianna was very ill around that time and that her mother, Esther J., thought she had appendicitis. She recalled Brianna being very sick and there were red blobs in her vomit, which she thought at the time were red grape skins. Jesus Christ, they'd attempted murder prior. In a statement to the court, Esther said that she was devastated that her, quote, lonely daughter was killed by, quote, someone we believed to be her friend, someone that we trusted, someone that I was so happy that she had, fearing that my child had been lonely. So for those that don't know, I haven't talked about this, but Brianna J's parents have talked about the fact that she had a lot of social anxiety. She didn't have a lot of friends. And these two murderers basically got her guard down because she had so few friends, and she thought she had finally found a couple people that she could hang out with and have fun with and spend time with. And they used that trust to get her guard down, get her somewhere secluded, and murder her. I imagine a lot of you guys in chat probably, it's not that hard to believe. A lot of trans women who are young have a hard time with the social stuff because it's hard, right? And they took advantage of that. They targeted someone so vulnerable who already had it so shit, and they ended her life so horribly. They're such horrible pieces of shit. It's such a feel-bad story. Like, there's just no happy ending other than these two little shits are being sent to life in prison. Jenkinson and Ratcliffe met, age 11, at Kolchek High School in Warrington, and stayed friends after Jenkinson moved to Birchwood High School in autumn 2022, after an incident involving her bringing cannabis edibles into class. It was at Birchwood that Jenkinson befriended Brianna, who did not attend ordinary lessons because of problems with anxiety and an eating disorder. Jenkinson, whose mother is a secondary school teacher, told Ratcliffe she had become obsessed with Brianna, and she soon put her on a list of children the teenagers wanted to kill. The others were 4 boys they disliked. One Ratcliffe thought was a, quote, nonce, another the boy considered a love rival, and 2 who had been mean to Jenkinson's boyfriend. Literally just incel right-wing kids. That's literally all they were. They were chuddy kids who had murderous desires and acted on them. Politics and severe mental illness came together to create a horrific hate crime in this situation. That's what happened here. Brianna became their focus after they failed to lure one of the others out via a fake social media profile. She would be, quote, easier to kill, they agreed, in one of thousands of text messages exchanged in the run-up to the murder on the 11th of February last year. The teenagers plotted her murder meticulously at the age of 15, with Jenkinson handwriting a plan for how, where, and when they would stab Brianna. They even had a code word, quote, gay, to signal the start of the attack in Kolchak Linear Park in Warrington. They carried it out almost to the... For those that don't know, because of this detail going out, conservatives have made it like a meme to reply just gay to any post talking about this story. Like, to say the last thing she probably heard before she was murdered. Conservatives truly are not deserving of any form of human, like, respect. The fact that we treat them as fellow humans at all is genuinely more than they deserve. They carried it out almost to the letter, stabbing Brianna 28 times before they were disturbed by a couple walking their dogs. Ratcliffe met Brianna for the first time on the day of the murder. While planning the killing, he repeatedly referred to her not as she, but it, and a, quote, femboy thing, and said he, quote, just wanted to see what size dick it was, unquote. Yip said his messages were, quote, transphobic and dehumanizing. Yeah, no shit. So yeah, they were chasers. They obviously there was a sexual aspect to it for them. They both hate and are degenerately lustful for trans women in particular. Giving evidence, Ratcliffe insisted he was not transphobic and blamed the murder on Jenkinson. Oh, wow, really? It's not your fault? You're not transphobic and it was all the other person's fault? Man, what a misunderstanding. Why don't you just get up and go then? But it was his hunting knife, brought on a ski trip to Bulgaria over the 2022 to 23 Christmas break, that was used to stab Brianna. Police found it in his bedroom after his arrest, the day after the killing. Brianna's DNA and his were detected on the knife. Brianna's blood was also discovered on his shoes and coat. There was no forensic evidence linking Jenkinson to the weapon, and no spots of blood were found on her clothing. In her post-conviction confession, she claimed that was because they had been washed. In the dock, the teenagers never looked at each other and were separated by security guards and intermediaries employed to ensure they understood the court process. Neither reacted as the sentence was passed, with Jenkinson playing with a green fidget toy. They're allowed to have fidget toys? Okay, I guess. An initial psychiatric assessment of Jenkinson suggested she had traits of autism and ADHD, but the psychiatrist changed his diagnostic post-conviction, saying she had, quote, a severe form of conduct dissocial disorder, one of the features of which is having no empathy. Yip said this provided, quote, some explanation for how Jenkinson could commit such a dreadful murder, but did not lower her culpability. She told the teenager, quote, Scarlett, I have concluded that the primary motivation for Brianna's murder was your deep desire to kill. The messages reveal your fantasies and show your sadistic motives. Brianna's murder was exceptionally brutal. After his arrest, Ratcliffe was diagnosed with autism, and the judge accepted that his social skills were, quote, not as developed as most people of your age. But she said, quote, your autism cannot provide any real excuses for the offense. Manchester Crown Court heard that after he was charged with Brianna's murder, Ratcliffe stopped talking. He was diagnosed with selective mutism, speaking only to his mother. The trial was delayed for months as his legal team struggled to take instructions from him. When it eventually began, at the end of last year, he was given special dispensation by the judge to type his evidence, telling the jury that science was his favorite subject at school and he had wanted to study microbiology at university. Giving evidence, Jenkinson admitted to an obsession with what her barrister called, quote, dark materials, but said it was all fantasy that she had never acted on. She had downloaded a special browser on her phone to watch, quote, real murders and torture on the dark web, and kept detailed notes about serial killers including Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Dog, you don't need to get, like, the Tor browser to watch murders online. Go on Reddit. Go on Twitter. Dude, you can't go on Twitter. You can't throw a rock without hitting a gore video on Twitter these days, dog. You don't need to download Tor. What the fuck? Nicola Wynne Williams, a senior prosecutor at CPS, said, "This sentencing hearing concludes one of the most disturbing cases that the Crown Prosecution Service has had to deal with. Quote, at just 16, Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe are convicted killers responsible for the brutal murder of a vulnerable young girl who thought they were her friends. They have been given a life term of imprisonment and have shown no remorse." I feel like there's no better point to stop this article on than that. Guys, I'm glad there was at least a bit of a silver lining to this, but I think that Brianna J's story, more so than anything, and I need you guys to know I am not victim blaming here, is something that can be learned from. If you are trans, it's probably something you've heard before, that you live in like constant danger of being hate crimed, but it's just kind of an idea. This is an example of how it really happens. The fact that, like, someone you might have just became friends with a couple weeks ago who's just maybe a little weird about you being trans, but they seem to have, like, good intentions, maybe when they ask you to go on that hiking trip, maybe you think twice. I know that this sounds like weird advice, like, oh, live your life in fear, but there are a lot of fucking freaks out there that do this kind of shit. Most crimes are committed by someone that the victim already knows. If you're a trans person and you're ever going to be hate crimed, it's probably by somebody that's in your life that you already know, that you can't trust. Not saying that's going to be every person here. It's probably not every person here. But if it is going to happen to you, it's probably not going to be a stranger. Yeah, live your life. In public, there are witnesses. You're going to be fine in public, but worry about people who you already know, that just have something off about them, that maybe comment about you being trans too much in a weird way. That kind of makes you feel uncomfortable, but you feel like you might be rude for speaking out about it or acting on how it makes you feel uncomfortable. They relied on the fact that she was desperate for friendship, she was socially anxious, and so she probably no doubt felt like any of the red flags that came up would, you know, if she acted on them, she would come off as mean and crazy and, you know, overreacting. And I have no doubt that she felt some sort of red flags come up about these people. They made weird comments about her being trans constantly. Like, one of them asked her, I just want to know how big it is. Stuff like that. Bad optics and all. Yeah, I get that, yeah. But regardless, I think it's important to know this is the way that these types of hate crimes happen. We've had the entire story laid out of how they met her, how they planned it, how they went about doing it, and we know that most crimes across the board are mostly committed by people who knew the victim beforehand. Like property crime, sex crime, everything. So just know, if you're going to get hate crimed, it's not going to be some stranger on the street, probably. It's going to be somebody who's going to try to get your guard down. You got to keep your guard up. You got to protect yourself. Always look out for number one. Rest in peace, Brianna J. And I'm just glad to say that her victim, or not her victims, her murderers, the people who victimized her, are now seeing justice. Life prison sentences. It's pretty hardcore for minors in the UK, by the way. It goes to show how brutal the murder was.